Hi, I'm Em and this is Books and Bath Bombs. Today I'm going to be doing the Unpopular Opinions book tag. This book tag was created by the book Archer, and I'm gonna leave a link to the original video down in the description, so if you haven't seen the original tag video yet, you totally should, because this is such a great tag. I just want to start this video off by talking about my relationship to this tag, because I absolutely adore this tag. So the first time I saw this tag, I think, was on Ariel Bissett's channel. She did it together with Petford and Prong 07, and they are two of my favorites here on BookTube. And since then, I've been really loving this tag. I've been looking through so many people doing this tag, and I found a lot of people who are now my absolute faves here on BookTube because of that tag. So I really adore this tag, and I'm so happy it exists. I just love unpopular opinions. They're so fascinating, especially when someone thinks something differently from what I think. I think it's really interesting to see how other people perceive certain things and stuff, and it's just such a great tag, so it feels so good to finally be doing it myself. Enough gushing, let's get discussing. Okay, so the first question for this tag is a popular book or series that you didn't like. I have two answers for this. The first one is the more obvious one that I know that a lot of other people don't like either, and that is The Maze Runner by James Dashner. I did end up giving this a 3-star review, so it's not like I hated it or something. I just didn't enjoy reading it. The main character was really frustrating. Like every other page he was like, oh, I can't remember this, I can't remember that. And I understand it's hard that you just lost your memory and everything is confusing, but it just got so repetitive and I didn't enjoy reading it. So it took me a real long time to read that book, even though it's pretty short and it's pretty fast-paced. And yeah, I did not enjoy it. My second answer for this is The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Ahdieh. And this is a book that a lot of people really like. And for me, this was one of those books that suffered from a case of overhype. So if I had just picked this book up randomly and not heard anything about it, I might have enjoyed it a bit more for what it is. But everyone was raving about it and saying it was so good, and the synopsis sounded really great. But in the end, it was just meh. The story, while interesting, was a little bit off to me, and the main character and her main love interest, it just felt so weird. I mean, they definitely had chemistry and stuff. I ended up shipping them. But if you just step outside for a bit and think about it, it was a pretty weird relationship that they have, and I did not enjoy that. So I haven't read on any of these. I haven't read the final book in that duology, and I haven't read anything in the Maze Runner trilogy, and I have no interest in reading the rest of the books in those series whatsoever because I did not enjoy those two first books. Number 2 is a popular book or series that everyone else seems to hate but you love. Okay, so I have two answers for this one as well, and this is such an exciting question because I finally get to showcase some books that I love. Okay, so the first one is the one that I definitely feel like people dislike, and that is The Heir by Hira Cass. This might be my favorite book out of all of the selection books. People just keep on hating on it, and I understand why people dislike it, I really do, but I really liked it. I think Edelyn, even though annoying, was a better main character than America. She was more fascinating to read about. I think her story definitely brought a lot more to this world. I feel like Edelyn was a more interesting main character than America Singer was. America is nice and all, but when I read from America's perspective, I was more interested in everything going on around her, but when I read about Edelyn, I cared more about her and her journey. I think The Heir was a really solid start to a new chapter in that world. It was really good, like story-wise, and it was really well brought together, and it was a really solid book. I really disliked the final book, but The Heir was a really great story. I enjoyed it, and I might want to reread it someday. Alright, so my second answer for this is a book that I love with all my heart. This series is one of my absolute favorite series of all time. I think it's brilliant in so many ways. I could go on about why I love it forever, but I'm not going to. But the thing I've noticed with this series is that some popular booktubers have had it on their TBRs, but then they got hauled it without even reading it. And that just makes me so sad because this series deserves more international recognition. I'm talking about the Engels Force trilogy by Sara Bergmark-Elfgren and Mats Strandberg, and this is a Swedish series. So there might be some translation issues if you're reading this in English. I don't know, I haven't read it in English. I've only read it in Swedish because it's a Swedish book. And this series is everything that I love. It's such a great YA series, and I just wish more people in the US and the UK and everywhere else in the world picked it up, because it deserves some international love. Here in Sweden it is a very well-loved series, but internationally no one talks about it, which is insane. I know that this is a tag video, but I'm just gonna talk a little bit about this book because I want to try to get you to read it. So if you like magic, you like fantasy, you like contemporary, you like LGBTQ characters, you like drama, you like interesting and complex characters, then this series is definitely for you. It has all of those things and so much more. This series is just so complex and wonderful, and I love it to bits. Question number 3 is a love triangle where the main character ended up with the person you did not want them to end up with, or an OTP that you didn't like. I have a couple of answers for this. The first one, I don't want to go into specifics, but I did not like who Laura Jean ended up with in P.S. I Still Love You. If you've read that book, you know what I'm talking about, but if you haven't, I don't want to spoil you. But there are 2 love interests in this story, and I did not like who Laura Jean ended up with in the end. I just felt like that character wasn't really being deserving of her, and they had issues, and I just didn't like it. I wanted her to end up with the other person, but she didn't, and it sucks. But yeah. And we have some other ones that I'm just gonna mention quickly because they're not really book related. Okay, so the first one we have is Dirk Jake from Homestuck. The second we have is John Day from Homestuck, and the third and most important one out of all of these is Eleven and River Song from Doctor Who. This is probably my biggest no TP of all time. I do not ship them at all. I don't like that ship. I don't like it. No. Question number 4 is a popular book genre that you hardly ever reach for. And for me, this is probably historical fiction or high fantasy. I think I read more high fantasy than historical fiction, but I don't like high fantasy. I have a really hard time getting into it. And historical fiction is just something that I've never gotten around to doing. I might in the future, maybe, who knows. Question number 5 is a popular or beloved character that you do not like. And the thing is, I usually like popular characters that people like, but there's one person that I really don't like at all, and that is America's Singer, again from the selection. I just didn't like reading from her perspective. For 3 whole books she was whining and whining, and she has some redeeming qualities. She is a nice person, but I'm just so frustrated with her all the time. So I did ultimately not like her. Question number 6 is a popular author that you can't seem to get into. And the thing is, when I try an author, I do get into them at least a bit. There's just one author I can think of that sort of fits for this, and that is Cassandra Clare. Everyone loves Cassandra Clare, and I've tried reading City of Bones a couple of times. I started reading this and I got like 100 pages in. It wasn't very interesting, so I put it down. About a year later, I picked it back up, read about another 100 or so pages, but it was boring, so I didn't keep reading, and I haven't kept reading since. I still have a bookmark in here, but I'm not interested in picking it up. However, I found Clockwork Angel for a pretty cheap price when I was in the US, so I did buy it, and maybe I'll read it someday, but these are not priority TBR at all. I had to take a break from filming because my camera battery was dying, so that's why things look a bit different. But anyway, let's get on with question number 7. A popular book trope that you're tired of seeing. And the thing I want to talk about today is not really a book trope as much as just a thing that have been happening a lot recently. I talked about this in my August wrap-up. Basically, what I'm tired of is authors that have ended their work just adding new content years later. Even though they've said that the thing is done. This happened with the Selection series. It was all like, oh, this is gonna be a trilogy. The final book in this trilogy came out, and then like half a year later, Kira Cass was like, surprise bitch, you're getting 2 new books. And everyone was like, what? And then I loved one of the books. Like I said, I mentioned that in the first question, The Heir, and then The Crown sucked. And just that whole add-on wasn't really necessary, even though I personally really liked The Heir, like I said. But yeah, it didn't feel necessary, it just felt forced. The most recent addition to this has been Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. It was totally unnecessary, and all of this add-on stuff that J.K. Rowling and everyone else is doing isn't necessary, because The Harry Potter series was really solid on its own. It doesn't need adding on to. Another example of this is the To All the Boys I've Loved Before series by Jenny Han. I talked about this series earlier as well. But Jenny Han recently announced that there is going to be a third book in this series, even though she stated very clearly that it was just a duology. Who is surprised? I'm not. Question number 8. A popular series that you have no interest in reading. Boy, there are quite a few. The most, I think, possibly controversial one is the A Court of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah J. Maas. As you can see, I am reading the Throne of Glass series. I've read the first 2 books. Heir of Fire is sitting here waiting to be read, and I'm not a massive fan of this series. I like it. I like Sarah J. Maas's writing style as well, but I'm not a huge fan. And from what I've heard about A Court of Thorns and Roses, I'm skeptical about even going into it. It doesn't really sound like something I feel interested about, so I'm just gonna sit out on that one. Another one that I don't want to read is The Star-Touched Queen. I don't remember who wrote it, but you can see it here on the cover. I'm just not interested. I know a lot of people like it, but it doesn't sound appealing. And then we also have like every high fantasy ever. I do not feel interested in reading Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. I'm kind of intrigued by picking up a Brandon Sanderson book, but at the same time I'm not, because I feel like I'm not gonna like it, and I'm scared about that because I want to like it because everyone else likes it, and that's kind of a problem on its own. But yeah, I'm scared of picking up his books. We have reached the final question. Question number 9. The saying goes, the book is always better than the movie, but what movie did you prefer to the book? And I feel like this is really hard because we always prefer the book to the movie. The movies are never gonna do the books the same justice. And me, myself, I'm not really a movie person, like generally, I'm not interested in movies. There's this one movie that I really like, especially compared to its book, and that is the movie edition of Me Before You. I really enjoyed the movie. I feel like the cast brought the characters to life in a much larger way than the book did. I just love the cast, Emilia Clarke and Sam Claflin especially. They are such amazing actors. And all of the other people in the cast. There were so many people that I recognized from elsewhere. Just all of the fantasy and sci-fi people were there. We had Daenerys, we had Finnick, we had Tywin Lannister, who is such a badass. We had Clara Oswald from Doctor Who, and we had Neville Longbottom. We had so many of those people, and it was so much fun to see them do something typical contemporary. I just feel like that movie did such a great job translating this book to the screen, and it came to life in such a vivid way, so I actually prefer the Me Before You movie to the book. But yeah, those were all of the questions in the Unpopular Opinions book tag. Now I want to tag one person to do this tag, and I'm gonna tag Emily from Emily Reads to do it. Of course, if you haven't done this tag and you want to, of course you can do it. I wasn't tagged by anyone, but I did it anyway. This is such a great tag, and I highly encourage you to do it. It is one of my absolute favorites. It is so much fun to hear everyone's opinions. I already talked about all this, so I'm gonna shut up now. That is going to be it for this video. If you have any thoughts of any of the things that I mentioned, like what are your opinions on some of these books or characters? Do you like them? Do you not like them? Do you have any unpopular opinions that you feel like no one else feel except for you? Let me know, because I love unpopular opinions. Like I said, that is it for this video. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!